Coming now is a congressman who serves as a member of the House Judiciary Committee, where he sits on the Constitution Subcommittee and the Immigration Subcommittee. He believes the Constitution means what it says and that it should be read in light of the intent of our founding fathers. Imagine that. In fact, he has never caught a copy of the Constitution in his coat pocket. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome to the podium from the great state of Iowa, Representative Steve King.
Thank you all very much. Thanks for the welcome. Thanks to FRC and everybody that's contributing to make this conference what it is. And for me, sitting back in the back listening to Gary Bauer's speech, I'm up clapping my hands too, and it gets me going. And I'm wondering here what kind of a void he's left me to try to fill. But you know, I want to thank FRC, and I want to do it in this way, by telling you of an example of how people that are on the front lines every day, living and breathing our faith and our values, can make a difference and change things in the real world in short time. And that would be this. Last December 1st, we received an email from Tom McCluskey that was a copy of an order, a memo that was written by Walter Reed Military Hospital. And that memo that came to us, I'm standing there at my staff's desk when it came through. Some of you know about this memo. It's dated September 14th, 2011, and it's 4 pages long, single-spaced. And you get down to the end of the memo, and this is how they deal with visitors at Walter Reed Hospital, visitors for our wounded warriors, for our honorable, noble patriots. And this item number F says, no religious items, i.e. Bibles, reading material, and or artifacts are allowed to be given away or used during a visit. Could you believe that? In the United States of America, every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine took an oath to uphold this Constitution. And the First Amendment gives us freedom of religion, and they took an oath and they put their lives on the line, and many of them gave their lives and many of them gave their limbs to defend this Constitution, and yet it's violated by the order at Walter Reed. Now, it was handed to me in the morning. I'm going to guess somebody gave me a memo what time that was. 8:10 in the morning, I guess it was, and I went to the floor that later on to give a speech about, 6 or so hours later. And I didn't know if I was going to speak to it, but this memo was in my jacket pocket. And I thought, I'm just going to let fly what I really think. And actually, here's the note. I missed it. It was handed to me at 2:14 p.m., December 1st. I was on the floor at 8:10 p.m. that same day giving that speech and letting them know about our soldiers, our noble soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines that have paid such a price to defend this Constitution. That sent the message out. I'm sure it echoed through Walter Reed. The rule was rescinded the following morning at 10:30 a.m. That doesn't happen if people like Tony Perkins and Tom McCluskey and many others are on the ball, watching all these things, having their network out there, pulling information in, and knowing where to send it to try to get a response. And I will say then also, shortly after that, we had a meeting with an admiral and some of the personnel, Senator Grassley and myself in my office, and they agreed that they would rewrite the rule. Now, this all happened on December 1st that it came up. They withdrew the rule on December 2nd. And the thing that I thought was ironic was I was looking through some of the dates. December 2nd, the day they withdrew the rule, happened to also be the date of a bill that I was reminded of as I listened to Gary Bauer. They're sending religious workers into the United States from all across the different places in the world. It's a religious workers visa. We grant 5,000 of those a year to come into the United States. And then it's just another 5,000 each year, another 5,000, another 5,000. And so I look at that and I think, how many Baptist ministers are going into Saudi Arabia to preach the word there? Zero. In fact, we had an awfully difficult time even getting a Bible into a place like Saudi Arabia and many of the other Arab countries. And so I introduced a bill on that same day that they withdrew the rule at Walter Reed. Coincidental. It's called the Religious Workers Reciprocity Act. And you understand. But what it simply says is that when our religious workers are allowed into your country, and we have an agreement to do that, then you can send your religious workers to our country under a similar agreement. If not, no deal. And so I wanted to talk about some of the lawlessness, the unconstitutional activities that are taking place out of the Oval Office here in the United States. And I do care a lot about this Constitution, and there's a fine line, sharp, I think a bright line separation of powers between the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branch of government. And I'm watching as the President of the United States takes an oath of office, and included in that oath is the language that's referred to within the oath, within the Constitution, that said he shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Well, so it's his job to defend the word of the people that's voiced through the Congress and signed by any previous president or himself. Not so with DOMA, is it? The Defense of Marriage Act, the president has said that he was going through an evolving position on same-sex marriage, so finally he decided he no longer supported DOMA. And when he decided that, they decided they would not defend the assault on the Defense of Marriage Act out of the executive branch, which is his duty to do so and is part of his oath. Well, I'm not as concerned about that as some of the other things, because I really don't want to send somebody into there that would throw the game, so to speak. I don't want to send shoeless Joe Jackson in to defend the Defense of Marriage Act, but we need to defend it. And instead, we've got the President of the United States undermine it by sending memos out to our military personnel, first directing them to conduct same-sex marriage on our military bases anywhere in the world where it's legal, and finally replacing that rule, that memorandum, with one that says, go ahead and do so, but we're not going to order you to have same-sex marriage. And they're having them. On bases around the world, in places in the United States, same-sex marriage in direct offense to the Defense of Marriage Act. This is an undermining of our Constitution and the rule of law and the separation of powers. That's one item. There are so many others. No Child Left Behind, suspended by the President of the United States. There's not room for him to do that. He doesn't have that discretion to do that. Welfare to work. Back in the 90s, a hard battle was fought, and Bill Clinton finally signed the Welfare Reform Act. Took credit for it, but he signed it. And there are 80 different means-tested federal welfare programs in the United States. 80. Now, nobody can list them from memory. Nobody knows how they all interact with each other, or how they advocate for people to do the right thing or discourages them from doing the wrong thing. I think in many cases it encourages them to do the wrong thing. But there's only one that required welfare to work. That was the TANF program, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families. That was written so tight, it was written to prevent Bill Clinton from squirting away from the welfare to work. President Obama knew that, and instead he still suspended welfare to work by his executive edict. That is unconstitutional for him. He does not have the authority to do such a thing. And we sit here watching some of this happen. And I will tell you that people will come to me and say, why don't you fix this? Why don't you fix that? Why don't you fix the other thing? And the answer to that is, I could stop and do only one thing for maybe 2 or 3 years and undo one of the things that Barack Obama has done. Meanwhile, scores, hundreds, maybe even thousands of them creep up on us. We have got the wrong man in the White House, and this man is one that is, I believe, doing great violence to the Constitution of the United States and the rule of law. And welfare to work is just one of those. Then we also have this piece called DREAM Act Light. And I know a little about that policy. I've sat on the Immigration Committee for now 10 years. And here's what. The President of the United States, giving a speech before the Bell School here in Washington, D.C., said to them, in the Bell High School, I know you want me to pass the DREAM Act by executive order, but I can't do that. You've been studying your Constitution. You know, this is March 28, 2011, by the way. You know that I can't do that because there's a separation of powers. The legislature, the Congress, passes the laws. My job is to enforce them, and the judicial branches is to interpret them. That was the President's word a year ago last March But last June 15th, it was an entirely different story. He turned 180 degrees, and with a high degree of audacity, which I think is the president's favorite word, audacity, and with a straight face, assumed upon himself the power to write immigration law by executive edict. And they wrote in that memorandum 7 places they talked about, 7 places they talked about prosecutorial discretion, and 22 places they used the word individuals. When you read something like that from a legal perspective, that says they're preparing for litigation. Well, I better prepare for litigation on that one. And that's the one way we can stop this in this way. But the president created 4 classes of people. That's unconstitutional. Only the Congress can do that. If it's prosecutorial discretion, it has to be individuals, not classes of people. He created 4 classes of people, and he directed U.S. Citizenship Immigration Services to issue work permits to people that were subject to removal proceedings. He made a work permit out of thin air. And every single permit that allows somebody to be in the United States that was not naturally born here is created by the Congress, not the President of the United States. Now, that only brings me to the one that is the most egregious, and that is the destruction that he has done to our religious freedom with the Health and Human Services order that directs employers, all employers, including our religious employers, to provide contraceptives, sterilizations, and abortifacients to their insurance policy for every one of their employees. Now, that goes directly against most of our religious institutions in the country, the ones that I side with anyway, and that includes the Catholic Church especially. And when the president announced that this would happen, and he did so at noon on a Friday, he announced that this would happen, and 2 weeks later, after taking a beating from the public, then he held a press conference. That was at noon on a Friday, and he said, well, I'm going to change it now. Now I'm going to give the religious institutions, make an accommodation to the religious institutions, and I'm now going to require the insurance companies to provide these contraceptive sterilizations and abortifacients for free. Remember? He said twice, for free. And I'm listening to this press conference live, and I'm thinking, what could the president have done to change this rule that was authorized under Obamacare, that he can order the insurance companies now to take this on and say to do so for free? We went back and looked at the rule. The published rule that was out for the comment period that eventually has the force and effect of law, nothing changed. Not an I dotted differently, not a T crossed differently, just a president of the United States that has, I said under the immigration piece, manufactured immigration law and a work permit out of thin air. But this president had the audacity to attempt to, and so far succeed in legislating by press conference. Never happened before that I know of. We can't let this man do this. It comes at us at a pace so fast and so hard. So fast and so hard that when you get run over by that truck from the White House, and by the time you peel yourself up off the pavement, they run over you again and again and run over many others at the same time. Our solution comes in November. We're going to stand and fight this every day. Our solution comes in November. And so, I want to tell you also Obamacare. I don't have to say a lot about it. You know about it. But it is this. The most sovereign thing you have is your soul. We hold that. We protect that. It's sovereign to us. And God grants that to us at the moment of conception. Our soul is put within us. Now, the president hasn't figured out how to nationalize that yet. But they have, under Obamacare, figured out how to take your skin and everything inside it, nationalize it. Take over the management of your health, an unconstitutional takings by the federal government of the management of your health. That's got to be the first thing that goes, the full 100% repeal of Obamacare. I want to do that. I want to have that repeal ready January 20th, 2013, for Mitt Romney to sign as soon as he takes his hand down from the oath of office. And no more Obamacare. That's got to go. And let me bring it around to this. Ronald Reagan articulated clearly the shining city on the hill, that America was, that America is. And its image is in his mind's eye. It's in our mind's eye, too. But that shining city on the hill didn't sit on nothing. It didn't float on a cloud. It wasn't out in thin air. It sits on something solid. That's the pillars of American exceptionalism. Beautiful marble pillars of American exceptionalism are the underpinnings for the shining city on the hill. They are in there in the Bill of Rights, the freedom of speech and religion and the press, the right to peaceably assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances, the keep and bear arms, property rights, devolve the powers to the people or the states or the people respectively. Those things are in the Bill of Rights. There are others. Free enterprise capitalism, that economic machine that brings us out of the economic doldrums. The rule of law, an essential pillar of American exceptionalism. Our Judeo-Christian values, Western civilization, pillar after pillar after pillar, holding up this shining city on the hill. And what are we faced with? The President of the United States and his leftist minions out there every day, their little jackhammers chiseling away at those pillars, undermining the pillars of American exceptionalism, attempting to bring down the shining city on the hill, turn it into rubble, and they have no idea what they would build on top of that rubble. But I know this. We are not going to let them do that. We're going to refurbish those pillars. We're going to strengthen the shining city on the hill. And we're going to serve God and country in that order. There is a fine future for the United States of America. And we're going to have a chance to live it. And when that victory comes, it'll be his victory, not our victory. It'll be in his time, not our time. God bless you all. God bless America.